and it's been great meeting the comrades in the framework of trying to set up anti-capitalist resistance. So I just want to say a few words about why Socialist Resistance welcomes this initiative. And we do so because it's moving towards the possible creation of a new revolutionary anti-capitalist organisation. We have found ourselves to be increasingly in agreement with Mutiny since we both opposed Brexit. We did so for the same reason. We believed that it was opening the door to the far right and a more authoritarian regime in Britain. And at the same time, we had no illusions in the neoliberal European Union. Events since the 2016 referendum have confirmed our analysis at the time. We also both agree with the need to put the environmental crisis and an eco-socialist alternative at the centre of anti-capitalism. We challenge the growth-based and consumption-driven system of capitalism, which is also responsible for the development of pandemics such as COVID-19. And the struggle we are engaged in, therefore, is not just a struggle to end capitalism and build a social society, but to have a viable planet. This task is urgent. That's why we need a mass movement that compels governments to prevent the rise in global warming below 1.5 degrees by 2030. The fact that the COP26 will take place in Glasgow in 2021 gives left activists in the British state a particular responsibility to prioritise the struggle over the months ahead, including this coming November when the COP, that's the Intergovernmental Climate Change Conference, would otherwise have taken place. We also agree with comrades in Mutiny for the need to have a feminist, anti-racist and internationalist organisation that fights all forms of oppression and exploitation. Black Lives Matter and Me Too have mobilised millions of anti-racist and feminists. Disabled People's Organisation and LGBTIQ movements are mobilising to prevent reactionaries rolling back the limited gains that self-organised groups have won thus far and to build solidarity with other struggles. Social change will only come through the mass struggle of the working class in all its complexity and diversity. And it is the exploited and the oppressed themselves who should lead these movements. We know that radical policies against austerity, neoliberalism and oppression are popular. That's why Jeremy Corbyn and Bernie Sanders had so many enthusiastic supporters and came under unprecedented attack. We will still need to defend in the Labour Party and in the trade unions the political gains won while Jeremy was leader of the party. In Britain today, many on the left are now uncertain of the way forward. This is a moment of reflection and potential realignment. None of the existing left organisations are an end in themselves, although many think they are. Both Socialist Resistance and Mutiny oppose the top-down model of democratic centralist organisation and favour pluralist and internationalist organisation that can learn from struggles across the world. There is now the potential of a new revolutionary democratic anti-capitalist organisation. It would be irresponsible not to work towards us. This new organisation must be built on trust between individual activists and not be a block of organisations. And to do that, we need to work together, debate politics together, and get to know each other. That's why we appeal to all supporters of Socialist Resistance and Mutiny and individual activists who agree with the idea of anti-capitalist resistance to join us at our weekend school on the 12th and 13th of September. Thanks a lot and see you all there.
Of course, 100% agreement with everything that Fred has said. I mean, Fred said most of what needs to be said about anti-capitalist resistance. I would just add this. We have an obligation as Marxists, as revolutionary socialists, to stare reality in the face. That means accepting the scale of the crisis in all its different dimensions which we now face. The situation which Trotsky faced at the end of the 1930s, where the balance of forces was massively, massively unfavorable. The depth of the crisis was terrifying. The choice was socialism or barbarism, and we got barbarism. We got the war, we got the genocide, and so on. Now, we are in a similar kind of position, I think. The forces of the revolutionary left are incredibly weak. The scale of the crisis is absolutely massive. We have to be absolutely honest about the balance of forces. We have to be absolutely realistic. But I think what we also have to say is that standing in the tradition of Marx and Lenin and Trotsky, standing in the tradition of revolutionary socialism, we have an obligation to try and build organization. Those of us who have an understanding that revolutionary organization is the only way in which we can address this crisis and build an alternative, we have to actually take seriously that project. I think in Mutiny and Socialist Resistance, we have a very, very high measure of agreement. I think there are lots of other people beyond our very, very modest ranks who are in broad agreement about revolution, a broad agreement about the scale of the crisis, broad agreement about the sectarian left, and that's now a Lexit left. Instinctively, huge numbers of people understand that Lexit is the British expression of nationalism and racism. Huge numbers of young people in particular are repelled by the idea that we should be signed up to Brexit. And this was a clear kind of break point in the left. And then we've got the collapse of the Corbyn project. I mean, I know there are rearguard actions being fought inside the Labour Party, and we support those. Many of us in Mutiny are members of the Labour Party and active inside the Labour Party, but we have to be realistic that we're not going to recapture control of the Labour Party anytime soon, and certainly not within a time scale that matches the speed with which the crisis is now unfolding. So I think our feeling, the comrades who've been in negotiation about this in Mutiny and Socialist Resistance, and I suppose this has been going on now for 3 or 4 months informally, and we finally got to this point where we feel we've got to try and launch something, and we've got to be bold and confident and ambitious and reach out to the very large numbers of people. And I think they probably number in the thousands. I think there are probably thousands of people out there radicalized by Corbynism, radicalized by the crisis, radicalized by Black Lives Matter and Extinction Rebellion, who have a sense that we need an organized mass revolutionary left. And I think if we reach out to them and say, look, we've got very modest forces at the moment, but we are serious about trying to build it and grouping people together on the basis that what we're creating is something completely open and democratic, where everybody who comes on board with the project will be part of shaping it and deciding what form it takes. I think the response could be quite positive. We have no guarantee of success, but it seems to me that we have an obligation as revolutionary socialists to try. And that's really the basis of anti-capitalist resistance. That's what's got us to this point. So what I would urge everybody to do on this call is to sign up on the email list, have a look at the statement, which we're now going live with. Please project that statement on your networks, to your contacts, encourage others to read the statement, sign up to the statement, and come to the next meeting. What we're hoping is that this series of meetings that we've got in the run-up to the weekend school will build momentum, so that by the time we get to the weekend school, we will have quite a large number of people on the call, enough people on the call where it becomes credible for us to say to those people, let's move forwards together and try and create the embryo of a revolutionary socialist organization in Britain. We're taking it step by step. We're being very realistic about the scale of the task, but I think it's realistic for us to reach out now over the next month and a half to a large number of people and see if we can make that weekend school a real success.